A millionaire turns a deaf ear to his pregnant wife's desperate calls as she undergoes life-saving surgery, only to be overwhelmed by regret when he realizes the gravity of his actions. Alexander Donovan was a figure who appeared to possess everything, with riches that approached the legendary. A grand estate situated on the cliffs of Bel Air offering expansive vistas of the Pacific Ocean, and a name that resonated in elite circles where influential figures quietly negotiated deals worth billions. Yet beneath the dazzling surface of champagne-soaked galas and exotic sports cars, cracks began to form, initially minor but steadily expanding. Sophia, burdened with the weight of impending motherhood, sought his presence in her most delicate moments, longing for a single call to soothe her quaking heart. Yet Alexander found himself in a different realm, immersed in critical negotiations and mingling with prominent figures whose images adorned the covers of prestigious magazines. Unaware of the tempest gathering just beyond his perception, Alexander overlooked the fact that Sophia was on the brink of a struggle far more daunting than any corporate maneuvering. When destiny finally stepped in, it would compel him to confront regrets as piercing as broken shards of glass. Alexander's rise to the top was not a matter of mere fortune. It was shaped by unwavering determination, tireless drive, and an insatiable quest for excellence. At the age of 20, while many peers were still contemplating their academic paths, Alexander had already embarked on an entrepreneurial journey, founding a tech startup that attracted the attention of prominent industry leaders such as Sequoia Capital and Andreessen Horowitz. By the age of 25, he had successfully sold his creation for a sum substantial enough to capture public attention. Media outlets rushed to label him the next Mark Zuckerberg, yet Alexander dismissed such comparisons with a scoff. He sought to carve out his own path, refusing to linger in the shadows of others. Success trailed behind him, drawn in like moths to a flickering light. Stock prices surged, collaborations flourished around the world, and before long, he was rubbing shoulders with Bill Gates at international conferences and enjoying lighthearted moments with A-list stars at private gatherings. Yet, even in the midst of the glamour, Alexander always remembered those nights spent bent over a laptop in a small apartment, living on instant noodles and dreams fueled by caffeine. Those memories ignited his passion, honed his instincts, and served as a constant reminder of why he could never return to the life he had abandoned. His residence, an exquisite example of contemporary design forged from steel, glass, and determination, stood as a symbol of his journey and achievements. Expansive windows showcased stunning views of Los Angeles stretching out beneath, while a personal tennis court, infinity pool, and vast, meticulously kept gardens announced his presence with striking elegance. Tabloids referred to it as the Dono Palace, yet inside its lavish walls resided someone far more valuable to Alexander than all his wealth put together, Sophia Brookhaven Donovan. Sophia, in contrast to Alexander, emerged from modest origins, yet she embodied a grace and kindness that wealth could never procure. Her kindness shone brightly, enveloping all who were fortunate enough to encounter her warmth. Their love story unfolded like a scene from a fairy tale. At a charity event in Santa Monica, Alexander noticed her not mingling with the glamorous crowd sipping champagne, but rather kneeling beside a timid boy in a wheelchair, calming his anxieties about an impending surgery. In that instant, Alexander beheld something extraordinary and deep, a spirit untainted by artifice or avarice. With an unusual sense of hesitation, he introduced himself, a stark contrast to his usual confidence in commanding boardrooms, and found a shared enthusiasm for philanthropy. Half a year later, they promised each other forever on a Malibu beach, as the setting sun brushed the sky with shades of gold and crimson. The images portrayed a couple overflowing with potential, their radiant smiles set against the tumultuous waves in the background. For a while, the union fit them flawlessly. They journeyed across the world, driven not just by commerce, but by a desire to engage with diverse cultures and communities. Milan, Tokyo, Dubai, each destination marked by their journey, creating waves of uplifting transformation along the way. As Alexander captivated with his tactical genius, Sophia enchanted with her genuine compassion and sincerity. She emerged as a powerful advocate for women's healthcare, leveraging her influence to push for reforms and support marginalized communities. Life seemed enchanting nearly dreamlike. As the years went by, the pressures of Alexander's empire started to intrude upon their beloved figure. Late-night phone calls took the place of candlelit dinners, and the buzz of negotiations overshadowed the serene moments they once held dear. The once idealistic young entrepreneur, who envisioned a world transformed by their dreams, has now evolved into a formidable force, driven by mergers, acquisitions, and an unending quest for greater success. Each moment disconnected seemed like a risk, every lost chance a looming disaster. Sophia sensed the change, softly encouraging him to disconnect, to recall what was genuinely important. "We have one another," she'd whisper in the stillness of the night, discovering him wandering the bedroom, absorbed in yet another international deal. He had assured everyone that he would finish up shortly, yet he vanished into his office until the break of day. When Sophia revealed her pregnancy, a radiant joy lit up her face like never before. She imagined a future brimming with gentle melodies, enchanting tales, and the delightful sound of little footsteps resonating throughout their magnificent abode. She wished Alexander would take a moment to pause, even just for a while, to truly appreciate the wonder of parenthood. However, the pregnancy unfolded during a period of economic turmoil. Markets wobbled uncertainly, investors became uneasy, and supply chains struggled under extraordinary pressure. Instead of retreating, Alexander intensified his efforts, firmly believing that ensuring his family's future demanded his complete dedication. "It's for the little one," he reassured her, "just a bit more time." Sophia held onto her faith, convinced that when stability returned, the man she had once loved would come back to her as well. Yet, beneath the surface, uncertainty remained. Had Alexander fallen captive to the excitement of the pursuit? The exhilarating thrill of sealing agreements? The heady power of exerting influence? It all appeared to engulf him entirely. As Sophia's pregnancy advanced, her body started to indicate signs of distress. Intermittent episodes of fainting, along with dizziness and shortness of breath, suggested underlying complications, leading Dr. Grace Kim, her respected obstetrician, to advise her to manage her stress levels. Sophia's greatest need was for support, particularly from Alexander. Yet her calls frequently fell on deaf ears, her pleas lost amidst a sea of voicemails. Nights felt the most desolate, awakening to discover his side of the bed vacant, the soft illumination of his laptop screen spilling out from beneath his office door. The staff made efforts to console her, offering tea and warm towels, yet none could truly bridge the emptiness created by his absence. She found solace in imagining the future, their child nestled in Alexander's embrace. His priorities shifted, and surely then he would comprehend. Unbeknownst to them, destiny hovered in the shadows, ready to dismantle the fragile reality they had so meticulously built. To those looking in from the outside, Sophia seemed to embody tranquility, a radiant expectant mother adorned in grace, persisting in her charitable endeavors, even amidst the inevitable trials of pregnancy. Her days brimmed with charity events, meetings with donors, and planning sessions for community initiatives, all while she carried herself with an air of grace and composure that felt almost ethereal. Yet, in the privacy of her own space, her body engaged in a quiet battle against unseen forces that eluded her comprehension and expression. She was beset by breathlessness even after the slightest effort. Even the simple act of moving from one room to another left her breathless, as if she had just completed a grueling marathon. Ascending the stairs transformed into an arduous endeavor, with every step bringing a surge of adrenaline that pounded relentlessly in her chest, resonating within her like a foreboding drumbeat. As darkness enveloped the world outside, a profound stillness took hold, and a weight pressed upon her chest, murmuring foreboding messages that she fought to dismiss. Every symptom tugged at the corners of her awareness, yet they were brushed aside as typical pregnancy woes, bolstered by Dr. Kim's calm reassurances during their regular checkups. Yet, a sense of discomfort remained with Sophia, wound tightly in the depths of her being like a serpent poised to pounce. On one of those visits, nestled in the comfortable surroundings of Dr. Kim's office, a room decorated with pictures of joyful parents holding their healthy babies, each snapshot reflecting her expertise and commitment, Sophia finally expressed the anxieties she had been keeping inside. "I'm more tired than I expected," she admitted, her voice hesitant but heavy with worry. She looked down at her hands, which were tightly clasped in her lap, before meeting Dr. Kim's gaze. He sat across from her, his expression a blend of attentiveness and reassurance. "It might simply be typical variations," Dr. Kim responded softly, her voice calm yet inviting. "Each pregnancy journey is unique, and experiencing fatigue is a frequent occurrence, particularly as your body adapts to nurture another being." She hesitated, sifting through the notes on her clipboard before proceeding. "Nonetheless, I've observed something different during your recent visits. Your blood pressure has been gradually increasing. It's not concerning at this point, but I want to monitor it closely as we progress." "High blood pressure," Sophia echoed, her voice laced with skepticism. She had consistently taken pride in her good health, maintaining a nutritious diet, staying physically active, and emphasizing the importance of self-care. The notion of her body turning against her now seemed surreal, nearly unfathomable to grasp. "Indeed," Dr. Kim affirmed, nodding thoughtfully. "While it may not seem significant, we must stay alert regarding conditions such as preeclampsia, which can arise in certain pregnancies. It usually appears later in the third trimester, but early observation is crucial." She leaned in just a bit, her eyes unwavering and filled with understanding. "We will conduct further blood tests to assess your protein levels and confirm that everything is operating as it should. In the meantime, try to keep your worries at bay. It's probably nothing serious, but do take good care of yourself. Take time to rest, reduce stress levels, and pay attention to your body's signals. If you notice any unusual symptoms such as severe headaches, dizziness, blurred vision, or swelling in your hands and face, please come to see me right away." Sophia nodded in a daze, taking in the information, yet finding it difficult to align it with the self-image she had always maintained, one of strength, capability, and invincibility. As she exited the office that day, gripping the prescription slip for the lab tests, an unsettling sensation lingered within her, as if her body had slipped from her grasp. It felt like it had become a craft navigating through regulations she couldn't entirely comprehend, steered by powers outside her influence. The journey back felt like a haze, her thoughts racing with uncertainties and worries she wasn't prepared to face. What implications did this hold for her child, for her destiny, for the meticulously crafted existence she had created? Upon returning home, Sophia positioned herself before the mirror in her bedroom, examining her reflection intently. Her cheeks retained a gentle radiance, and her belly arched gracefully, embodying the essence of fresh starts. Yet beneath the surface, a tempest was gathering, a clash of hope and fear, strength and vulnerability, certainty and doubt. She gently rested her hand on her abdomen, sensing the delicate stirrings within. No matter what the future held, she was certain of one thing. She would battle, not solely for her own sake, but for the fragile existence blossoming inside her. Sophia nodded, vowing to take the counsel to heart. That evening, she picked up the phone and called Alexander, eager to convey what Dr. Kim had shared. In the bustling heart of New York, he found himself immersed in negotiations for an international hotel partnership, one that held the promise of transforming Donovan Global's footprint in the world. The stakes were elevated, and Sophia understood the significance of this deal for him, recognizing it as a representation of years filled with unwavering ambition and sacrifice. As her call went directly to voicemail, a spark of irritation intertwined with her comprehension. She crafted a meticulously written message. "Greetings, my dear. Dr. Kim advised that we monitor my blood pressure closely. There's no immediate concern, but she is being careful regarding preeclampsia. Reach out to me when you find a spare moment. I would truly appreciate the opportunity to discuss it. I long for your presence." Her voice revealed no hint of the tension coiling within her, yet the burden of unvoiced anxieties remained heavy long after she hung up. As darkness enveloped the room, Sophia felt an irresistible urge to check her phone, the gentle light of the bedside lamp illuminating her restless thoughts. With every moment of silence from the screen, her heart felt the weight of despair deepen. A tempest of feelings churned inside her. A deep worry for her well-being, a longing for him to be near, and a bubbling frustration she fought to keep at bay. Was it too much to hope for a response from her husband when there was even a whisper of trouble with their pregnancy? She sought to make sense of his absence. He was occupied, he was overwhelmed, he relied on her to manage everything, yet reason provided scant solace against the persistent solitude that infiltrated her mind. A week passed before Alexander made his way back to Los Angeles, enveloped in discussions at the radiant headquarters of Donovan Global in Century City. The structure stood as a bastion of contemporary design, featuring advanced security measures, innovative technology, and a dedicated floor for his exclusive office suite. It was a realm of its own, where each nuance radiated strength and exactness. On a whim, Sophia chose to delight him one afternoon, equipped with a basket of her mother's cherished recipe for grilled vegetable sandwiches. The scent alone evoked memories of more uncomplicated days, when existence wasn't governed by corporate agendas or the latest news in financial publications. As she stepped into the lavish lobby, her driver assisted in bringing the basket inside. The atmosphere exuded an ethereal quality. Shimmering marble floors mirrored the sunlight pouring in through grand windows. The glass sculptures shimmered, casting brilliant patterns of light, while the impeccably dressed staff moved gracefully in their black suits, every action intentional and exacting. Each time Sophia arrived, she felt a twinge of discomfort, as though she were entering a theater where all the other actors had memorized their parts while she stood there, unprepared. In her role as the boss's wife, she encountered a fascinating blend of respect and examination. She had become familiar with the stares, the soft murmurs, and the sporadic presence of photographers outside, poised for any hint of drama or fascination. Yet today, those familiar sensations felt more intense, more vivid, perhaps due to the air of uncertainty. With thoughts swirling in her mind, she made her way to the front desk, mustering a smile as she declared her presence. "I'm here to see Mr. Donovan," she said softly, her grip on the basket's handle tightening more than needed. The receptionist lifted her gaze for a moment, her face a mask of neutrality, then nodded and proceeded to make the call upstairs. As she waited, Sophia let her eyes drift around the lobby, absorbing the magnificence that consistently filled her with a sense of wonder and trepidation. She pondered, not for the umpteenth time, whether Alexander ever felt daunted by the vastness of all he had created, or if he flourished in it, drawing strength from the relentless rhythm of progress and success. As the elevator doors slid apart, Alexander emerged, his broad smile lighting up the space. Sophia experienced a wave of relief intertwined with an unfamiliar emotion that eluded her grasp. "Sophia," he said with a gentle warmth, enveloping her in a hug that carried the subtle sense of cologne and coffee. "What has drawn you to this place?" His tone carried a lightness, almost playful, yet there was a flicker of distraction in his eyes, hinting that his thoughts remained anchored to the meeting he had just left. "I thought I'd bring you lunch," she said, lifting the basket with a smile. "Mother's cherished recipe. I thought you might appreciate a little time to relax." For a fleeting instant, Alexander appeared truly moved, and Sophia sensed a subtle triumph blossom inside her. They withdrew to his office, an expansive haven adorned with modern furnishings and breathtaking vistas of the city skyline. As they sat together, sharing sandwiches and catching up on trivial matters, Sophia wrestled with the idea of bringing up her doctor's concerns. Yet, each time she tried to speak, the words seemed to stick in her throat, overwhelmed by the distant hum of conversations and the relentless ticking of the clock on the wall. Instead, she absorbed every word as Alexander shared the intricacies of his journey to New York, his enthusiasm evident as he painted a vivid picture of the potential partnership and its significance for the company. As she departed, the basket lay empty and the afternoon sun cast golden shadows throughout the room, leaving Sophia with an unsettling sense that something significant remained unspoken. As she re-entered the lively lobby, the burden of unexpressed realities bore down on her shoulders. Outside, the cameras clicked incessantly, their bright flashes cutting through the dimming twilight. Amidst the glitz and achievements that enveloped her, Sophia found herself pondering whether anyone genuinely grasped the silent struggles waged just out of sight. As Alexander finally took off his earpiece and turned to face her, Sophia experienced a blend of relief and annoyance surge through her. His tailored navy suit and crisp white shirt only highlighted the growing divide between them, a gap that appeared to expand with every day that went by. She rose gradually, carefully adjusting her dress as if to gather her thoughts before she began to speak. "Alexander," she started gently, infusing her voice with warmth even as the underlying tensions bubbled just below. "I was thinking it would be nice to share a lunch together. Only we remain. It has been weeks since we last had a meaningful conversation." He cast a fleeting look at the bag she held, then returned his gaze to her face, his expression a mystery. In that brief moment, silence enveloped the space, punctuated only by the subtle hum of the air conditioning and the soft, distant whispers drifting from behind closed doors. He let out a sharp breath, his fingers gliding through his impeccably arranged hair. "My apologies, Sophia. You're familiar with the way these situations unfold. This conversation has been prolonged for hours and remains unresolved." He waved his hand in the general direction of his office, where papers lay strewn across his desk like remnants of a tempest. "Thank you for bringing lunch. That was considerate." Her smile wavered just a bit, yet she nodded, determined not to reveal her disappointment too overtly. "No problem at all. I long to see you. Our conversations have been quite sparse lately, haven't they? It's not focused on the infant, nor the future that follows." Her words lingered in the atmosphere, laden with unexpressed significance. Alexander's expression darkened, his brow knitting together as if he were wrestling with a complex issue, or maybe just an annoying predicament. "I understand that I've had a lot on my plate lately. Surely you grasp the essence of it, right? These deals are absolutely essential at this moment. Securing this partnership would establish a strong foundation for our future. Isn't it true that we both desire stability and security?" She took a deep breath, the heaviness of his reasoning settling heavily upon her. Naturally, she grasped the situation. How could she possibly miss it? She had always admired his ambition above all else. Yet here she stood, observing him as he glanced away, his attention caught by the glow of his phone with each new notification, and she found herself lost in thought. "What is the price?" She spoke softly, weighing her words with precision. Yet at times, it seems as though everything else is overshadowing our connection, overshadowing this moment. She rested her hand softly on her expanding belly, the movement intentional and filled with warmth. "We are creating a family, Alexander, and families require care as well." For the first time since her arrival, he appeared to genuinely see her. The facade of professionalism faltered for a brief moment, exposing a hint of vulnerability. He moved in, extending his hand to brush against her arm. "You're right," he conceded, his tone gentler now. "I've allowed things to become unbalanced. I assure you, as soon as this agreement is wrapped up, I will dedicate more time to both of you." His sincerity nearly disarmed her entirely, yet a hint of skepticism remained in the recesses of her thoughts. Making promises was simple, but honoring them proved to be a different challenge altogether. Yet, she managed to conjure a faint, optimistic smile. "All right, I'll take you up on that." Simply. Then Randall returned, clearing his throat with an air of apology. "Mr. Donovan, the board members seek further explanation regarding Section 4. They are in anticipation." Alexander let out a weary sigh, his fingers pressing against the bridge of his nose. "Absolutely, they are." He glanced back at Sophia, a hint of a remorseful smile playing on his lips. "Shall we pick this up at a later time? Shall we have dinner this evening? I promise to make time for this." She paused, caught in a conflict between irritation and the hope of trusting him. At last, she gave a nod of agreement. "Dinner does sound lovely, but I must ask you, Alexander, to refrain from making promises that you may not be able to fulfill." "I won't," he assured her, leaning in to place a gentle kiss on her forehead. "I appreciate your visit." Indeed, as he faded away into his office, Leaving her solitary in the pristine sophistication of the lounge, Sophia reclined against the couch. She gazed at the untouched bag of food resting in her lap, contemplating whether their bond could withstand the unyielding pressures of his life, or if she and the baby would always find themselves in the shadows. At last, he silenced his earpiece, and the faint murmur of voices on the other end came to an abrupt halt. "Sophia, is everything okay?" His tone was sharp, lacking any hint of warmth or interest, as if his thoughts were already speeding toward the next pressing issue that demanded his attention. She stood up from the edge of his desk, her hands nervously smoothing her blouse as she tried to conjure a bright smile. It was a smile that fell short of her eyes, yet she wished it would conceal the turmoil churning within her heart. "I came to surprise you with lunch," she said brightly, holding up the wicker basket like an offering, something precious meant to bridge the widening gap between them. "Do you recall those delightful grilled vegetable sandwiches you loved? I made sure to pack some extra mustard, just the way you enjoy it." For a brief instant, his eyes met hers, a subtle warmth passing through him. But soon they returned to the phone resting on his desk, its screen aglow with messages and emails vying for his focus. "Apologies," he responded tersely, avoiding her gaze, "but I can't take a lunch break at this moment. We are in the process of finalizing a significant partnership in Singapore, and the timing is of utmost importance." The words struck her with the force of a frigid breeze, robbing her of her breath. Her lower lip trembled faintly, revealing the struggle to keep her poise intact. "Text, I understand that you have a lot on your plate," she started, her voice laced with a mix of irritation and urgency. "However, Alexander, I've been attempting to contact you throughout the entire week. I have some worries regarding my well-being. Dr. Kim emphasizes the importance of taking this matter seriously. My blood pressure is quite erratic, experiencing sudden spikes without warning. He cautioned me against overlooking these symptoms." He cut her off mid-sentence with a sharp nod, his face a mask of inscrutability beneath the polished facade of professionalism he donned with ease. "I listened to your voicemail," he stated, his voice even, as though he were methodically going through a list rather than confronting the anxieties of the woman in front of him. "How are you feeling at this moment? In a physical sense, that is." The inquiry took her by surprise, rendering her momentarily speechless. Is she all right? In terms of physicality, maybe. Yet, in terms of emotions, thoughts, and spirit, she felt fragmented, coming apart at the edges beneath the burden of his absence and the growing ambiguity of their future together. "In terms of physicality, I suppose so," she managed to say, her voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "This is not something to take lightly, Alexander. I truly need your support." Her plea lingered in the atmosphere, raw and unrefined, yet it appeared to rebound harmlessly off the walls of his office, unable to breach the stronghold he had constructed around his heart. Just as he was about to reply, or maybe brush her off completely, his phone vibrated persistently on the desk, diverting his attention yet again. He cast a quick look at the screen, his expression tightening as he took in the message that had just arrived. "We'll talk tonight, I promise," he said quickly, already turning away from her. "Thank you for providing lunch. I regret that I won't be able to join you. Shall we have dinner together?" With that, he continued his call, turning away without a glance back, leaving her there, solitary, tears brimming in her eyes as she held the basket close to her chest, as if it were her only salvation. That evening, he returned home sooner than he typically did, at 8 o'clock, which was a rare event in its own right. He discovered her nestled on the couch in the living room, casually flipping through the pages of a magazine that held no real interest for her. Leaning down, he pressed a gentle kiss to her cheek, his lips making fleeting contact with her skin before he drew back. "I apologize. Regarding today," he murmured, his apology feeling scripted, mechanical. Yet even as he articulated the words, his phone buzzed relentlessly in his pocket, diverting his focus once more. Every vibration pulled at him, luring him deeper into the digital whirlwind of transactions and timelines that engulfed his every conscious second. Worn out from the struggle, too weary to engage, Sophia merely nodded, allowing him to think that his mere existence was enough, despite the evident distraction of his thoughts. Yet, an unsettling feeling took root in her chest, eating away at her like a relentless pain. Her body ached, burdened and fatigued, sending silent signals that she could no longer dismiss, no matter how fiercely she attempted to overlook them. Each missed meal, each sleepless night, each twinge of solitude thickened the already delicate equilibrium she was striving to uphold with all her might. She yearned, with a fervent heart, that Alexander's assurances of future dialogues would ultimately blossom into real support, into instances of authentic connection and deep understanding. Yet time was eluding her, flowing through her grasp like fine grains of sand in an hourglass. She was already 6 months pregnant, her belly swollen with new life, yet the worries crowding her thoughts eclipsed the happiness that should have marked this significant moment. Yet, the unyielding progression of Alexander's deals persisted without pause. Every negotiation, every contract, every conference call overshadowing the heartbeat that held the greatest significance, the delicate rhythm resonating within her womb, a poignant reminder of the family they were meant to create together. Unbeknownst to them, each overlooked signal and every delayed significant conversation was planting the groundwork for a crisis that would forever change the course of their lives. As Alexander pursued success and validation within the confines of the boardroom, Sophia confronted the stark truth that certain matters demand immediate attention. Health, love, and undeniably, the delicate miracle of life blossoming within her. In the weeks that followed, Alexander's reality whirled with unprecedented speed. Donovan Global was on the verge of remarkable growth, with luxury hotels, upscale real estate, and wellness retreats ready to transform the landscape of holistic travel. Across continents, boardrooms hummed with respect for Alexander, celebrating him as a pioneer who transformed opportunities into wealth. From Dubai to London to Hong Kong, his name became a hallmark of achievement. Luxury publications celebrated him as the quintessential contemporary Renaissance entrepreneur. In the midst of this chaos, Sophia's calls became more and more intrusive. Despite his affection for her, her voice echoed the complexities he was not prepared to face. Convinced that her worries were overstated, she noted that Dr. Kim had not announced any emergency. He silently promised himself to return the call later, but once more work intruded. Returning to Los Angeles, Sophia's health deteriorated. What began as mild headaches transformed into crippling migraines. Her feet throbbed with discomfort, turning each step into a challenge. Ascending the stairs made her feel lightheaded and queasy. Regular consultations with Dr. Kim unveiled increasing dangers. The doctor, clearly worried, insisted that hospital observation would be the safest option. Preeclampsia is a serious condition, Sophia. Stability is essential for both you and the baby. Sophia, hesitant to face the confines of a hospital without Alexander, skillfully arranged for strict bed rest at home, with regular monitoring by nurses. Dr. Kim concurred but stressed the importance of seeking medical attention right away if anything deteriorates. The experience of bed rest felt profoundly isolating. Time seemed to stretch infinitely as Sophia perused baby name books, envisioning the futures she yearned to share with Alexander. In an effort to occupy her mind, she immersed herself in parenting guides, crafted delicate crocheted blankets, and thoughtfully rearranged the nursery. As she scrolled through social media, images of friends sharing joyful moments with their families filled her feed, intensifying her feelings of envy and anxiety. Like a tightly wound coil within her, these feelings constricted, rendering each breath a challenge. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she picked up the phone and called Alexander. Once again, halfway across the globe in Singapore, he found himself deeply immersed in the tumultuous aftermath of renegotiating a significant partnership. The phone rang incessantly before finally yielding to voicemail. Her determination faltered, and despite her efforts to restrain herself, tears cascaded down her face. Was she acting irrationally? Asking for too much? Every message she sent seemed to be an outpouring of her soul into an abyss, resulting in a blend of guilt and desperation that lingered in the air. Margaret Brookhaven's mother visited every day, her gentle voice and kind eyes now reflecting a deep concern. She arrived with steaming pots of soup and settled next to Sophia, weaving tales of baby names and crafting images of a radiant future. "Your father and I will always be here for you," Margaret said softly, offering her daughter comfort. Yet no measure of solace could bridge the vast emptiness left by Alexander. If only he would step inside, embrace her tightly, and softly assure her that all would be well. In the stillness of the night, Sophia jolted awake, her hand pressed against her abdomen as a sudden cramp pierced through her body. A wave of pain crashed over her, robbing her of breath, then ebbed away, leaving her heart racing uncontrollably. The clock read 4:15 a.m., and shadows enveloped the room. She grasped her phone, attempting to calm her quivering hands. With a gentle hand resting on her belly, she whispered, "It's all right, little one. We're doing fine. We must be." She paused momentarily before reaching out to Alexander. He'd probably be lost in a flurry of meetings or dozing off with his phone on silent. Instead, she called the private nurse, who came promptly. Upon reviewing her blood pressure, the nurse's expression turned serious. It was strikingly elevated. Although hospitalization was advised, a brief period of rest led to a decrease in pain after just an hour. Sophia assured both herself and the nurse that it was merely a false alarm. Worn out, she collapsed into a troubled slumber, her pillow soaked with sorrow. After several days, Alexander made his way back to Los Angeles. Creeping into the house late at night, he anticipated a hush enveloping the space. Instead, he discovered Sophia in the living room, draped in a robe, her hair in disarray, her expression a blend of relief and barely contained fury. With deliberate grace, she lifted herself, gently supporting her rounded abdomen. "You're home," she murmured, her voice trembling. With a heavy sigh, he placed his suitcase on the ground. "I apologize for the late hour. The departure was postponed. How have you been?" His words came across as robotic, nearly detached, as if he were speaking to a colleague instead of his partner. Sophia gazed at him, new tears beginning to form in her eyes. "What are your thoughts about me, Alexander?" Her voice trembled, burdened by the depth of her feelings. "I find myself facing challenges. My blood pressure is alarmingly elevated. Our little one, our precious child, is in danger." A shadow of remorse crossed his face. "What kept you from going to the hospital? It's clear that finances aren't a concern. We are capable of securing the finest care available." She interrupted him, her frustration boiling to the surface. "That isn't what I'm looking for. I have no desire for extravagance. I long for my husband, my partner, someone who truly cares to pick up the phone when I'm overwhelmed with fear about losing this baby. Nurses, my mother, they are amazing, yet they can't compare to you." He moved closer to her, his arms reaching out. She flinched, pain gathering in her gaze. That solitary instant struck him profoundly. He recognized the profound distance that had grown between them, and he understood the sense of abandonment she must have experienced. Yet a resolute part of him resisted. Hadn't he been laboring relentlessly to ensure their future? Wasn't it clear to her that these agreements represented wealth that could last for generations? "Sophia," he murmured gently, seeking to instill a sense of tranquility. "I understand your apprehension, but you must understand, I'm balancing significant agreements here. These are not insignificant. They will define the legacy of our family." Her eyes narrowed, skepticism flooding her expression. "I would exchange every bit of that inheritance for a healthy child and a husband who is truly there." The silence lingered between them, thick and oppressive. Alexander surveyed the lavish living room, with its high ceilings, exquisite artwork, and the subtle fragrance of lilies wafting from the arrangement on the coffee table. Amidst the wealth, he sensed a profound lack of control. With a reluctant sigh, he stepped closer, his movements careful as he rested a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I have arrived. I will ensure this is done correctly. I will go ahead and cancel a few meetings. We will meet Dr. Kim together. If the situation demands it, I assure you I will pause everything else." Her gaze delved into his, yearning for authenticity. At last she gave a slow nod. "Simply see it through. It's time to pay attention to me. "I promise," he said, enveloping her in a tender embrace, mindful not to apply pressure to her belly. She leaned against him, her tears dampening his shirt. In that brief instant, they found themselves together, intertwined by affection and the delicate promise of a better future. Yet, in that moment, his phone buzzed, breaking the delicate tranquility. He quelled it swiftly, yet the tension crept back like a persistent shadow. She shut her eyes, silently hoping that this signified the dawn of transformation, that he would prioritize her and their unborn child above the unyielding demands of his profession. In the days that followed, Alexander diligently worked to fulfill his commitments. He rearranged his schedule to accommodate early mornings or late nights, making sure he could be there for Sophia's doctor appointments. He personally drove her to Cedars-Sinai, gripping her hand tightly as Dr. Kim shared a measured sense of hope while underscoring the risks associated with preeclampsia. At home, he gathered water, assisted her in getting comfortable on the couch, and engaged in conversations about baby names with her. Their intimacy was fragile, akin to a soap bubble ready to pop with the faintest touch. Nevertheless, the pressures of his corporate empire did not dissipate just because he decided to put Sophia first. Agreements still needed his signature. Partners are still needed for FaceTime calls. As he meticulously created room for her, pressing messages quietly fell by the wayside. On certain nights, he found himself awake until the early hours, bent over conference calls. Sophia would awaken to the soft glow of his phone casting light upon his furrowed brow. Noticing her movement, he would gently return to bed, placing a soft kiss on her forehead. A quiet expression of regret, masked as comfort. Their relationship hung in the balance, caught between striving and the truth of their circumstances. They were making an effort, yet it felt as though unseen powers were resolutely intent on separating them. And lurking in the shadows, an unwelcome presence hovered, a challenge that neither affection nor riches could conquer, patiently lingering like a tempest ready to reveal its wrath. The day that would change everything arrived in stunning beauty. Golden sunlight enveloped the Donovan estate, casting the sky in shades of pink and orange, a tranquil facade concealing the turmoil to come. Sophia stirred from her slumber, a dull ache pulsing in her head, and her hand instinctively sought out her phone. No messages arrived from Alexander. He departed at the break of day for a crucial meeting, leaving behind a void where comfort ought to have resided. She shut her eyes, taking a deep breath, reminding herself to remain composed. Stress would not be beneficial for her blood pressure. A nurse was expected to arrive shortly, so she took a sip of herbal tea and leafed through a book on newborn care, trying to calm the fluttering anxiety in her stomach. At the same time, Alexander occupied the polished boardroom of the Millennium Biltmore, welcoming high-ranking officials from Bort International. This agreement has the potential to elevate Donovan Global to a leading position in the luxury market across Europe. The media was abuzz, with a sense of eager expectation surrounding a multi-billion-dollar announcement. Alexander radiated assurance. Sharp navy suit, gleaming shoes, stance flawless. Yet, lurking beneath the facade, a sense of guilt relentlessly consumed him. He had shattered yet another vow, abandoning Sophia by herself once more. Yet, the significance of this agreement eclipsed his reservations. The discussions progressed seamlessly, marked by courteous interactions and impressive displays. By mid-morning, the atmosphere was charged as both sides inched closer to a consensus. At midday, during a short break, Alexander glanced at his phone. Unfamiliar calls shrouded in mystery. A message from Randall. An urgent issue has arisen concerning Miss Donovan. His pulse raced with electric intensity. Without hesitation, he dialed Randall's number. "Alexander," Randall replied, his voice tight and abrupt. "What's going on?" "Sophia's nurse reached out to me," Alexander exclaimed, his thoughts spilling out quicker than he could comprehend. "She attempted to contact you, but your phone remained silent." Sophia fell to the floor in her home. She has been taken to Cedars-Sinai. The news struck Alexander with the force of a freight train, leaving him breathless. His heart thudded awkwardly in his chest. Fallen apart? Could you clarify that for me? It's unfortunate, Randall remarked, his voice heavy with concern. It seems they believe her blood pressure has risen. Extremely elevated. Emergency tests are currently in progress. Dr. Kim is managing the situation. It's essential to arrive at that destination. At this moment, Alexander concluded the conversation in silence, the phone falling from his quaking hands. A cold, paralyzing sensation spread through his limbs, as if vitality was being siphoned away. In the boardroom behind him, executives sat in anticipation for the meeting to continue, unaware of the tempest brewing within him. Yet all of that was irrelevant at this moment. Neither the deals, nor the deadlines, nor the empire he had constructed piece by piece. Just Sophia. He stepped back into the room, his complexion pale, his voice trembling as he spoke to Christophe Moreau and his team. I have to go right away. A family emergency has... isn't. My team will carry on with the discussion. Before anyone had a chance to react, he snatched his briefcase and dashed out, creating a trail of bewilderment and worry. Outside, Mark, his steadfast chauffeur, waited next to the polished black SUV. Alexander's voice trembled with a sense of urgency. Cedars Sinai. At this moment, the journey seemed endless, with every red light and obstacle feeling like a personal affront. Each slow-moving vehicle ahead, a direct challenge to my patience. Alexander tapped his foot with growing impatience. His fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned a stark white. Visions of Sophia's calls, the ones he had overlooked or brushed aside, surged through his thoughts like jagged pieces of shattered glass. Remorse clawed at him, piercing and incessant. He called Dr. Kim, but the line went directly to voicemail. Panic surged within him, constricting his breath. As the vehicle came to a sudden stop outside the hospital, Alexander sprang from the car and dashed through the glass doors, making a beeline for the maternity ward. A flustered nurse pointed him toward a waiting area, where Margaret sat slumped, her eyes puffy and red from tears. What transpired? He insisted, his voice trembling with the burden of fear. Margaret glanced upward, a mix of relief and fury battling on her tear-stained cheeks. Where have you been, Alexander? She has been making an effort. To get to you, her nurse discovered her lying unconscious on the floor. It's severe preeclampsia, possibly even Helpes syndrome. The acronym lingered ominously, a portent of perilous threats to life. Alexander's knees trembled, yet he willed himself to remain standing. Where is she at this moment? Emergency surgery, Margaret said, her voice trembling. They are performing a C-section immediately. She's just 7 months into her journey, yet their excitement is palpable. The heartbeat of the baby was declining. Helpless, Alexander remained motionless as time appeared to elongate endlessly. The sterile hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the white walls encroaching upon him like the bars of a cage. Words eluded him, his throat constricted as though held by unseen forces. Then Dr. Kim appeared, her scrubs showing the signs of strain. She lifted a hand to forestall his onslaught of inquiries. Sophia's condition is critical, she stated, her voice steady yet laced with authentic concern. An emergency C-section is underway. This is the sole opportunity to rescue both mother and child. Her blood pressure is alarmingly high, her liver enzymes are elevated, and her platelet count is critically low, indicative of classic signs of a concerning syndrome. We must move swiftly, Alexander gulped, his throat tightening. But she will make it through, won't she? And the baby? Dr. Kim's expression softened, yet her determination held strong. We are putting forth our utmost effort. Please keep us in your thoughts. With that, she vanished back into the operating room, leaving Alexander to fumble into a nearby chair. Margaret settled beside him, her tears flowing quietly down her face. He extended his hand toward hers, filled with uncertainty about whether he was worthy of such a simple act of solace from the woman whose daughter he had overlooked. The air was heavy with silence, wrapping around them like a dense fog. Minutes stretched endlessly, each tick of the clock echoing a profound sense of dread. Alexander's thoughts were a tumultuous sea of remorseful recollections, unanswered calls, insincere commitments, and the numerous occasions he had prioritized transactions over the vibrant existence growing inside Sophia. He whispered his hopes into the void, negotiating with any unseen force that might heed his call. Please grant me another opportunity. Allow them to endure. I assure you I will improve. In the operating room, the surgical lights shone brightly on Sophia's still figure as the medical team operated with a focus that stemmed from urgent necessity. Dr. Kim took command, issuing swift directives to the nurses and anesthesiologist. The infant was experiencing distress. Sophia's vitals hung in a delicate balance. Monitors emitted a series of unpredictable beeps, reflecting the wild fluctuations of her heart rate. Outside, Alexander and Margaret were accompanied by several family members, including Sophia's sister Miranda, along with a few close friends who had hurried over upon receiving the news. Visages were ashen, with eyes encircled in crimson. Soft murmurs of solace floated in the air of the waiting room, yet they did little to alleviate the heavy burden of anxiety that enveloped Alexander. Amidst the warmth of familiar faces, a profound sense of isolation enveloped him. Finally, a new doctor appeared, lowering his mask. "Excuse me, Mr. Donovan?" With unsteady legs, Alexander stood, Margaret by his side. Indeed, the physician provided a tired yet comforting acknowledgement. "The baby has been delivered. A young lad. He arrived early, yet he is currently stable. He is currently in the neonatal intensive care unit." The joy of the baby's survival quickly faded, eclipsed by the harsh truth of Sophia's unstable condition. "May I take a look? That person?" Alexander inquired, urgency lacing his tone. "She is on the path to recovery, yet remains at risk. You may enter for a short while. She remains unconscious at this time." With Margaret's hand firmly in his grasp, Alexander navigated towards the recovery room, his heart racing with intensity. Upon his arrival, the harmonious cacophony of machinery welcomed him. Sophia rested still on the bed, enveloped by a network of tubes and wires. Her complexion was ghostly, nearly see-through, as the four-drip delivered a continuous flow of medication, while the monitors flickered with varying readings. He moved forward with trepidation, fearful of inflicting any more pain upon her. With a tender touch, he swept a lock of hair away from her forehead, observing the chill of her skin. "Sophia," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I have arrived. I sincerely apologize." Her eyelids fluttered gently, yet she lay in a deep unconsciousness. A nurse stepped in, inspecting the forebag and fine-tuning the monitors. Alexander lingered with a sense of unease. "Will she be waking up shortly?" he inquired, his gaze filled with trepidation. The nurse replied gently, "We remain optimistic. Her body has endured an immense trauma. We're allowing her the necessary time to find her footing. The upcoming 24 hours are crucial." Alexander stepped aside, allowing the nurse to proceed with her task. He looked at Sophia's still presence, memories rushing in, her bright smile on their wedding day, the glimmer in her eyes when they first crossed paths at the children's hospital fundraiser. Where had that man disappeared to, the one who promised to hold her dear above everything else? How had he wandered so far astray? Guilt surged through him with the force of a tidal wave. He sank into a chair next to the bed, hiding his face in his hands. This was entirely his doing. He ought to have been present, ought to have acknowledged the gravity of her situation, ought to have set aside all else to guarantee her well-being. Instead, he had become engrossed in transactions, honors, and corporate theatrics, oblivious to the genuine turmoil brewing within his own household. Margaret gently rested her hand on his shoulder, offering solace. "I have faith that Sophia will overcome this," she said, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. "She possesses remarkable strength. She has deep feelings for you." Alexander nodded, his cheeks wet with tears. No words could convey the profound nature of his regret. He lingered in that space, murmuring unvoiced hopes, yearning for a hint that Sophia might awaken and come back to him. In the neonatal intensive care unit, their newborn son was engaged in his own struggle. At last, Breaking free from Sophia's presence, Alexander gathered his resolve to head to the NICU, joined by Margaret and a compassionate nurse named Rachel Evans. Renowned for her nurturing approach, Rachel had witnessed numerous premature infants triumph against the challenges they faced, and she held on to the hope that this little Donovan boy would be no different. Within the NICU, incubators filled the space, each one nurturing a delicate existence. The stillness was broken solely by the gentle whir of devices and the steady pulse of monitors. Alexander stood before the incubator marked baby boy Donovan, his eyes brimming with tears as he gazed at the tiny figure fighting to breathe amidst a tangle of tubes and wires. Rachel explained gently that your son is about 3 months premature. He is on oxygen support, yet he is alert and responsive. We will monitor him closely for any signs of infections or complications. Margaret pressed a trembling hand to her chest, tears streaming down her face. He's quite tiny. For a moment, Alexander found himself at a loss for words, engulfed by a whirlwind of fear, wonder, and an all-consuming paternal affection. At last, he murmured, "He's flawless." In that moment, gazing at his defenseless son, Alexander experienced the profound gravity of fatherhood envelop him. All the riches he held suddenly appeared devoid of significance. No sum of money could purchase health or ensure the recovery of Sophia and her baby. He softly rested his hand on the glass of the incubator. "Greetings, tiny one," he whispered softly. "I'm your father, and I assure you that as soon as you and your mother are well again, I will be leaving, to stand by your side forever." Margaret draped her arm over his shoulder. "He will overcome," she stated, her voice heavy with feeling, "and so will Sophia." The hours that ensued offered no comfort to Alexander, whose intense yearning for respite continued to go unmet. Even with the continuous flow of blood transfusions, medications designed to control her soaring blood pressure, and the unwavering watch of the medical team, Sophia's state hung dangerously in the balance. She was transferred to the intensive care unit, where the steady hum of machines became an ever-present companion. Dr. Kim commanded a rotating team of specialists who surrounded her bedside like vigilant guardians, adjusting treatments and scrutinizing lab results that defiantly resisted any semblance of optimism. At a certain moment, Dr. Kim moved closer to Alexander, her expression marked by seriousness. "Her kidneys are struggling," she murmured, her voice laden with unspoken concern, "and there are early indications of stress on her liver. We have taken all possible medical measures to stabilize her condition. Now, it is in her body's hands to respond. All we can do is observe and anticipate. Observe and be patient." Those 3 words felt like chains tethering Alexander to a moment elongated infinitely. Every tick of the clock echoed within him like the somber toll of a funeral bell, pulling him further into despair. Rest slipped through his fingers, and every bite felt like dust on his tongue. He drifted through the hospital hallways, his steps reverberating off the clinical surfaces, tormented by the looming fear of losing the woman who had anchored his existence. Margaret implored him to return home, even if only for a brief while, yet he simply shook his head in refusal. How could he walk away when each step away from Sophia felt like an act of treachery? Not after years of prioritizing boardroom conflicts over intimate bedtime talks. This was his atonement, and perhaps, if destiny permitted, his chance for redemption. In a fleeting moment of clarity, he ventured out into the hospital courtyard to find some peace. The sky loomed heavy, a muted gray expanse marked by gentle rain. Raindrops clung to his eyelashes as he tilted his face upward, allowing the cool droplets to blend with the tears he couldn't hold back. In that somber stillness, a memory emerged. Santa Monica, years ago, before their lives had intertwined. In that moment, he noticed her, an unfamiliar figure exuding warmth as she tenderly consoled ailing youth. Even then, her compassion resonated with him, a guiding light of warmth in a world frequently chilled by ambition. He believed she had transformed him. At some point, however, he allowed the alluring call of achievement to overshadow the gentle tune of affection. He retrieved his phone, the gadget that had previously bound him to a whirlwind of expectations, and gazed at its screensaver, a bright image of him and Sophia on a yacht, both laughing and unburdened. His thumb lingered above his contacts list, suspended for a brief moment. He contemplated tearing down the empire he had constructed piece by piece, voiding contracts, pausing discussions, resigning as CEO if it meant securing another opportunity with her. What was riches without her glow? Trembling, he dialed Randall's number, quantity. The phone rang twice before the connection was made. "Alexander, how are things going?" Randall inquired, his tone tinged with worry. "Postpone all my meetings," Alexander replied, his voice trembling with emotion. "Inform them that I am not available for the foreseeable future. If they resist, explain that it's a family crisis, a situation of utmost urgency." He hesitated, struggling to push down the knot forming in his throat. "If that ends the agreement, then so be it." Randall paused for a moment before he replied, "Got it, I'll take care of it." The conversation concluded, and Alexander tucked the phone away into his pocket. The rain poured down, drenching his attire, yet he remained unyielding. Under the somber sky, he murmured a prayer. "I pray for her survival. I would sacrifice it all for her return." For the next 48 hours, Alexander lingered in a threshold between hope and despair. The hospital staff implored him to rest, to nourish himself, to prioritize his well-being, yet he remained steadfast in his refusal. Instead, he settled into the ICU waiting room, drifting in and out of sleep on the hard, uncomfortable chairs, jolted awake by the steady beeping of monitors or the faint sound of footsteps echoing in the distance. When not engulfed in concern for Sophia, he felt an irresistible pull towards the NICU, captivated by the delicate miracle battling for existence within its incubator. The neonatologists expressed a measured sense of hope, highlighting the baby's slow but steady improvement, even in the face of numerous challenges that premature infants encounter. In solitude, Alexander plunged into a maze of remorse. Memories overwhelmed him, disregarding Sophia's. Calls that brushed aside her worries, placing work above the precious moments that truly counted. Every memory cut into him with the sharpness of a knife. On the second night, as silence enveloped the corridor, Dr. Kim emerged, her tired figure bearing a subtle spark of hope. "Alexander," she started softly, "Sophia's blood pressure is showing signs of improvement. Her kidney function remains delicate, yet there are indications of improvement. Her lab results are showing improvement." His breath caught in his throat. "Does this indicate that she's safe now?" Dr. Kim confirmed that we are progressing positively. "Catch a glimpse of her, but make it quick. She remains quite fragile." With his heart racing, Alexander stepped into the ICU after her. Under the gentle illumination of screens, he noticed Sophia's eyes begin to flutter open. He hurried to her side, mindful of not alarming her. A spark of acknowledgement ignited in her eyes, causing a constriction in his heart. "Sophia," he whispered, tears flowing freely. "I have arrived." She attempted to voice her thoughts, but only a hoarse whisper escaped her lips. He pressed the call button, summoning a nurse who arrived with a glass of water. Softly, he moistened her lips with a straw. "Beep, darling," she rasped, a sense of urgency lacing her delicate tone. Alexander nodded, gently caressing her forehead. "He is currently in the NICU. He is thriving. They say he possesses great strength, albeit in a smaller package." Relief gently eased the tension in her face, yet tears lingered in her eyes. Fear gripped her as she whispered, her voice trembling. I believed I would never encounter him." He vowed it with intensity. "I promise you will." Her gaze intensified, cutting through his barriers. "You abandoned me," she charged, her voice quaking. "Your presence was essential to me." He lowered his gaze, tears flowing without restraint. "I understand, and I feel a deep sense of regret for it. I sincerely apologize." Their gazes intertwined, a whirlwind of anguish and affection dancing in the space between them. With a delicate motion, Sophia extended her hand, and Alexander took it gently, bringing it to his lips in a tender gesture. The steady pulse of machines accompanied their quiet connection. As the nurse softly urged him that Sophia required some peace, He hesitantly let go of her hand and exited, uplifted by a flicker of hope. In the days ahead, small victories began to pile up. Sophia's blood pressure stabilized, her organs started to heal, and she was moved to a private recovery room. She inquired about the baby repeatedly, and before long, the doctors allowed a short visit to the NICU. As Alexander guided her closer, he observed Sophia extend a quivering hand into the incubator, her fingertips gently caressing their son's tiny, curled fist. Time appeared to stand still. In the absence of contracts and corporate empires, devoid of prying cameras, there existed only a mother's infinite love, a father's wonder, and a newborn triumphing against all odds. Sophia's recovery unfolded gradually, her spirit rekindling with every new dawn. In the meantime, the baby steadily grew stronger, yet his path in the NICU remained a challenging one. Amidst everything, Alexander underwent a remarkable transformation. The man was no longer fixed in place, to his device, pursuing opportunities and timelines. In his stead was an individual ready to exchange authority for visibility, assigning tasks and relying on others to guide Donovan Global while he was away. To some, it may have appeared as a sign of weakness, but to Alexander, it represented a profound clarity. He was meant to be here alongside Sophia and their son. Upon recognition by the hospital staff, which happened frequently, there were instances where they would ask for photos or interviews. However, Alexander opted out, avoiding the photographers waiting in the shadows. His attention was unwavering, dedicated solely to Sophia and their child. Slowly, they started to engage in the discussions they had long evaded, whispering softly against the backdrop of the rhythmic beeping of medical devices. Sophia shared her emotions of being overlooked, of experiencing abandonment. Alexander listened intently, tears cascading down his cheeks, offering apologies until his voice became strained. Gradually, with caution, she began to forgive him, not in a single moment but in pieces, reminiscent of sunlight piercing through dark storm clouds. One evening, with a grip that was delicate yet determined, Sophia gazed at him with unwavering focus. "Promise me," she whispered, "that nothing, no deal or business, will ever take precedence over us again." He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers, solidifying the promise with steadfast earnestness. "I assure you, there is nothing more important to me than you and our child." In the hallways, nurses lovingly referred to Alexander as the shadow, as he seldom wandered far from Sophia's side. Their words pierced his conscience, stirring memories of the man he once was and the calamity that finally roused him from his slumber. Amidst the heartache and healing, something beautiful blossomed, a renewed opportunity, crafted through openness and bound by affection. As the delicate newborn started to flourish, the neonatologist gently detached some of the medical tubes, allowing the parents cherished moments of bonding. On a notably bright day, they welcomed Sophia into the world of kangaroo care, cradling her baby against her bare chest in a tender skin-to-skin embrace. The delicate wonder wrapped around her finger with a gentle touch, as if asserting its presence in their realm. Alexander lingered close, his gaze sparkling with wonder and unfallen tears, observing as Nathaniel extended his tiny fists, yearning for solace. In that moment, they chose the name Nathaniel, meaning gift of God, a title that felt destined after all they had faced. Weeks unfurled like the delicate petals of a flower, blossoming gradually yet inevitably. Sophia blossomed with each passing day, while tiny Nathaniel stayed tucked away in the NICU, waging his own struggles. Alexander stayed close, only making brief trips back to their expansive estate to collect fresh clothes or address pressing issues. Every update from the neonatologist carried a sense of optimism. A bit acquired here, a breath steadied there. As Alexander observed his son grappling with each milestone, he couldn't help but ponder the triviality of corporate triumphs in contrast to this delicate yet powerful exhibition of existence. Meanwhile, Donovan Global faced increasing pressures, a stalled deal with international buyers and restless shareholders looming over them. When Randall briefed Alexander on impending deadlines and anxious board members, Alexander replied with calm determination, "If the deal collapses, so be it. My family is my top priority." Randall, caught in a mix of confusion and admiration, navigated the turmoil, quietly struck by this gentler, yet steadfast side of his superior. Sophia, while remaining fragile, found comfort in the fleeting moments spent by Nathaniel's incubator. In soft whispers, she shared lullabies, her voice crafting dreams that danced into his small ears, while her fingers gently followed the contours of his tiny hands. In the stillness of the night, she and Alexander exchanged soft apologies and heartfelt promises, mending the fractures that had formed between them, one gentle encounter, one sincere conversation at a time. The once all-consuming business empire now seemed far away, its demands softened by the illumination of what genuinely held significance. Sophia and Nathaniel were on a path to recovery, and in their journey, Alexander discovered a truth more profound than any financial record could disclose. The most profound treasure lies within love. At last, with the dedicated support of the NICU team, Nathaniel became strong enough to depart from the hospital. On that day, as Sophia ushered him through the magnificent doors of their abode, tears cascaded down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from sheer elation. A vibrant banner danced in the air, and the previously quiet nursery now brimmed with cuddly toys, gentle lights, and a sense of hope. Alexander looked at his son's little hand clasped around his finger, awestruck by how a simple gesture could carry such profound significance. Life transformed into a chaotic blend of diaper changes, doctor appointments, and endless sleepless nights. Yet each moment felt like an invaluable gem. He entrusted the management of Donovan Global's daily affairs to reliable executives, placing the welfare of his wife and child above any international merger. One evening, enveloped in the warm embrace of city lights filtering through tall windows, Sophia held Nathaniel close and turned to Alexander. "Do you wish you hadn't taken a step back?" she inquired gently. He shook his head, his voice unwavering and filled with determination. "Just that I wish I had done it earlier." In that moment, their gazes intertwined, promising unspoken commitments. Ambition would never again take precedence over family. In the weeks that ensued, Alexander reorganized elements of his company, demonstrating to investors that effective leadership need not entail personal sacrifice. A recent collaboration with Belfer International has confirmed that achievement can harmoniously exist alongside compassion. At home, Sophia welcomed her healing journey and rekindled her enthusiasm for philanthropy, resolute in her mission to shed light on high-risk pregnancies. In her inaugural public address as a new mother, she shared her story with a quivering bravery, recounting the challenges she faced along the way. At the brink of the stage, Alexander cradled Nathaniel in his embrace. With tears shimmering in his eyes, he clapped for the woman who had bravely battled for their future. They had teetered on the brink of losing it all, but love and resilience had seen them through. This chapter of their lives revealed that genuine richness isn't quantified by currency or transactions, but rather by the comfort found in embracing one another tightly. For Alexander Donovan, no billion-dollar acquisition could rival the invaluable lesson he absorbed during those cherished months. The true gems of existence are the individuals we hold dear. From dismissing Sophia's calls to the brink of losing her for good, his journey changed him completely. Love prevailed, transforming his focus and anchoring him in what was genuinely important: a flourishing baby boy, a healing wife, and a united promise to navigate life's journey side by side. If this moving tale resonated with you, we invite you to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Join us in raising awareness about the significance of family well-being and the extraordinary blessing of life. Keep an eye out for more uplifting stories that highlight what is genuinely important.